Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. This is a meeting with the Board of Selectmen. Today is March 9th, 2021. Is there a meeting to call the meeting to order?
So moved.
So moved.
Second.
Roll call vote, Mr. Wona,
Yes.
Mr. DeRoche,
Yes.
and I am a yes. And under the new guidelines, I have to announce everyone that's on the Zoom meeting with me attending right now with the Board of Selectmen. I see Miss Julie Hebert, the Town Administrator, Heather Sylvia, Director of Council on Aging, Jennifer Alves, a member of the Library Board of Trustees. Is that correct, Miss Alves?
That's correct. It's the chair.
I just wanted to make sure I got that right. And Dina Brasso, Director of Public Libraries.
Hi.
And Merrill Lee is out there in the background. Ms. Leonard, the Secretary of the Board of Selectmen's office, and it looks like David Flynn will be joining us as well, I believe, for the golf course. Is that good enough, Ms. Hebert?
Good, thank you.
First order of business, gentlemen, that we have is some minutes to be approved. First set in a long time. It looks like November 4th, 2020. Ms. Hebert, the only question I have before we do this, I looked at the minutes and it seems like we only voted on a quorum that day and then we went into executive session. Was that correct? Or is there other things that we're missing here?
I believe that-
Mr. Chair,
Mr. DeRoche?
I did watch the video because it was extremely short, and that is all we voted on that night.
Well, thank you very much, Selectman DeRoche. Is there a motion to approve the minutes of November 4th, 2020 regular session? Roll call vote, Mr. DeRoche.
Yes.
Mr. Wona?
Yes.
And I am a yes. Unfortunately, ladies and gentlemen at home, we have to do everything roll call votes now. Budget appointments is Mr. Flynn. We have golf first. Do you want to do library first? I can take it out of order. Mr. Flynn, I'm going to hold off on you because your budget's a little bit bigger than the other two budgets we're discussing.
Oh, no problem.
So if you want to go dock and go have a sip of coffee or something, thank you. We'll start with library. Welcome, Dina, Jennifer.
Thank you for having us today. If it's okay with you, Mr. Chair, I'd like to share my screen. I just have a few slides
Sure.
that support our budget if I can get to them. Oh no. Oh yes, here we go. If you can you see my screen?
Yep.
Okay, perfect. So Jennifer, on behalf of the Board of Trustees, and I are here to present our FY22 budget request. The highlights of the request this year are in our longevity line. First off, we have 10 positions here at the library, and 6 of our employees will have been with the town for 5 years or more in FY22. 2 of those employees will have been with the town for 10 years or more, so that's why you're seeing a big bump up there in longevity. The next increase is under operating, the sales expenses line, and that's due to our annual 2% contractual obligation to the sales network. This year, it also includes a bandwidth upgrade. All of our computers are through the sales network. They all run on that line, not through the town. And so our bandwidth currently is about 50% of what it should be for a library of our size, according to the American Library Association. So the network is looking to increase our bandwidth in FY22. And the other increase under operating is to our other supplies line. We cut that line a bit in FY21, and I'm hoping that we can build that back up a little bit every fiscal year going forward.
Okay.
One thing I haven't explained to you all, at least I don't think it's been explained in the 6 years I've been on board. The state, through the Mass Board of Library Commissioners, has something called the municipal appropriation requirement. And a municipality must appropriate a figure of at least the average of 3 years municipal appropriations increased by 2.5% in order for our library to be certified for the state aid to public libraries program. Certification and state aid are critical. Certification allows our patrons, Acushnet residents, to borrow material from any library in the state. It also allows them to go into any library in the state and borrow material there. So that's super important to our patronage for sure. And the state aid is critical primarily because another requirement the state has is that we spend 16% of our appropriated budget on material for direct patron use. What we have in the other supplies line only supports about half of that 16% requirement. And so we make up the difference through other funds, and one of those funds is state aid. This is the formula for how to calculate the municipal appropriation requirement. As you can see, our FY22 MAR is $278,132, and our FY22 request is $278,760. That's the closest we've been to the MAR in the 6 years I've been here. So I'm happy we've met it, but hopefully we don't go that close again. And then just in looking ahead to FY23, not that I expect anyone to mention, but I mentioned this to the FinCom as well. The MAR will be $285,295 in FY23, which is a much higher bump up than we've had recently. And that's because when you calculate FY20, 21, and 22, those are all around the same number. So that 2.5% increase really seems to factor in for FY23. So just a heads up that we'll have a different sort of conversation next year. And that's primarily the budget. While I have you, of course, I have to just tell you very quickly about what we've been doing at the library for the past few months since we last spoke with each other. We're still doing library takeout. We've been doing that since June. We've now served, as of today, over 5,000 patrons at our window. Since February, they've borrowed over 27,000 items at the window. We've distributed over 1,300 take and make kits. Those have been super popular. People are still printing, photocopying, faxing at our window. We're offering personalized book bundles. Since people can't come in and browse, this gives them an opportunity to have what they want without being able to come in and pick it for themselves. And we're still doing computer use by appointment. That's going really well. Our home delivery continues. Our Wi-Fi is on 24/7, and we do see people in the parking lot using that. And our digital resources continue to be super popular, and all increases across the board. So we're doing the very best we can to continue to serve the public. We're proud to do that. And we hope you'll support our FY22 budget request, which will allow us to continue to offer our services.
Dina,
Yes.
I just want to say thank you for everything you folks have done at the library board of trustees have done to accommodate our staff at the library over the past year of this pandemic. You guys have really knocked it out of the park. So
Thank you.
I truly do appreciate everything you guys have done. I mean, it's just incredible. I said it before, I think to you, how many people go over there, and I pass by there a lot because I reside right by there. And it's just truly incredible how many patrons I see over there at the library. And I think that it was really cool that you guys stood open through the drive up window. You created that option for our residents during this time of pandemic to give them an option to be able to go out and find something else to do other than sit at home and, you know, do nothing or not have other options. So I think it's great that you allow that opportunity for our families with children to get out there and explore and do the things that they need to do, and kept that library open and without incident, I would add. It's truly commendable for you and your staff and the library board of trustees. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I appreciate that very much. Thank you. That means a lot to hear that. I do want to say we're one of the few libraries in the network, the sales network, which is 70 public libraries, that has been able to do a face-to-face service. Most libraries are doing, you know, you call, you get what you want, they put it in a bag and they leave it out like on a table out, you know, and on the lawn for you to come pick up the bag. And we've been able, through the takeout window, which is just a beautiful design that has just worked out well, that we had that, and thanks to Jim Merritt for being able to build the trays and et cetera. But I think the face-to-face service we've been able to offer people is key, because that's one thing that's also lacking for people this past year, is just a face-to-face hello. So even if it's a brief encounter, it's something. And I think our residents have really appreciated that. And I know it means a lot to the staff also, and to myself, that we've been able to do it that way, because it's helpful to us too, to see people. You know, it's been a weird year for everybody. So
Yeah, that's, even when you're apart, that social interaction definitely helps, so.
Yep.
It gives people a little peace of mind to get out of the house for a little bit and socialize with people that they wouldn't normally do, right?
Mm-hmm.
Gentlemen, any questions for Dina or any concerns over the budget?
On my end, Dina, Jennifer, kudos to both of you. Thank you very much for, for the service during this pandemic.
I echo the
Thank
you.
same, I echo the same comments as Mr. Gasper and Mr. DeRoche. What I just find to be really remarkable is that just as a town, almost every corner of the town was pulling together, right? So while we have our public safety folks and Heather doing testing, the library is still functioning, town hall workers stepping up and serving the residents. It's just really remarkable. And so hats off to you for being a major part of this, dealing with the pandemic. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Gentlemen, so I know, Dina, that you don't have any kind of salary increases because the board's actually going into executive session, hopefully
Right.
to discuss some of that. So I'm on the mindset, gentlemen, if we just want to make a motion to approve the library's budget, given, everything falls in line with the salaries that we move forward with through Ms. Hebert, the town administrator, I'm fine with a motion to approve. I think they did a commendable job with their budget. Truly, it's truly commendable. So I'm all set. I'm all set with their budget. I couldn't ask any more of this budget. Is there a motion to approve the library's budget with the necessary changes to correlate with salaries somewhere in the near future if need be? Mr. DeRoche, roll call vote. Mr. DeRoche,
Yes.
Mr. Wona,
Yes.
and I'm a yes. Thank you, ladies.
Awesome. Thank you very much.
Thank
Take
you.
care.
Keep up the
Thank
great
you.
work.
Thank
All
you.
right. Thank you, Dina. Thank you, Jennifer.
Thank you.
Thank you. Take care.
All right, and we'll just jump right over to Ms. Heather Sylvia from the Council on Aging, our director over there. Welcome, Heather.
Thank you. Dina's a tough act to follow. I wish I had a PowerPoint.
Yeah,
So
you don't need one.
we're not asking for much. Ours is basically a housekeeping item. I'm asking for an $896 increase in my salaries part-time line item. We actually had an error in our budget last year. I didn't take into account that minimum wage was going up by 50 cents this past January. And it will go up again another 50 cents in January of 2022. So when you do the math, it only affects one position, one person at 19 and a half hours a week. So the total did come out to the $896. So that's the only increase that we're asking for.
And Heather, I'll say the same goes to you. Kudos on we've been locked up pretty much for a year now, going on a year now, dealing with this pandemic as a town. Truly what you've done over there with the Council on Aging, with your food drives. I think Mr. DeRoche spoke on that at Saturday mornings, reveal of the vaccine trailer and things of that nature. I know I got plenty of feedback from residents on that food drive that you did, fruits and stuff like that. I mean, it's just truly commendable what you've been able to do over there and trying to work the best you could with what you had to deal with. Seeing how that's the group of folks that are most susceptible to the pandemic. Truly another great job by you, Heather.
I'm blessed, I appreciate it, but you know what? I'm blessed with a good team. And I just want to throw one exciting statistic at you. We resumed outdoor programming March 1st. And even though it's been cold, we've got the heaters, we've got the pavilion, we've already serviced 30 town residents for programming, and it's only March 9th. So we're off to a good start. Please drive by anytime. You want to jump into an exercise class, stroll, whatever you want to do, we've got it all here.
All right, sounds good. Gentlemen, any questions, concerns, comments from Ms. Heather Sylvia from Council on Aging?
No. Not at this time.
Again, Heather, I'll say the same thing that I said to the library, right? Given the salary increases, whatever the board determines and whatever we're gonna end up doing as a town-wide thing, I'm all set with the budget. Great job. Wish you the best success in the upcoming year. Is there a motion to approve the Council on Aging's budget? Roll call vote. Selectman DeRoche,
Yes.
Selectman Wona,
Yes.
and I am a yes.
Thank
You
you.
guys, you
Thank
guys
you,
good?
Heather.
You guys good? Okay. Thank you, Heather. Have a good night.
Thanks, you too.
All right. The other budget that we're reviewing tonight is with Mr. Flynn, and he's up there. Mr. Flynn, you there?
Yep.
All right. So we're going back to the golf budget. Thank you for your patience, Mr. Flynn.
No problem.
So you want to, I mean, we don't have to go over all your line items. If you want to hit like most people do is talk about the, the increases or significant decreases. For instance, communication advertising, there's a $2,000, 20%. You got some maintenance, rents and leases, a pretty significant increase there as well, a double, well over a double. And then you did some things with salaries and repairs and maintenance.
Yeah, so to begin with the roughly $40,000 increase and knowing that the golf course is self-supporting, first off, we looked at where do we project the revenue for next year, just so you know where that's coming from to justify the increases. We took not this past year, because this past year was great, but it was almost too great. We don't want to assume that we would do that number of rounds again. So we went back to the past couple of years before that, took the average numbers of rounds, figured we haven't had a rate increase in a couple of years, and I think that's later on in your agenda. If we increased most of the rates by $2, that would raise $42,000, $44,000, somewhere right around there. So we figured that could pay for the $40,000 increase overall that we're looking for in the operating budget of the golf course. So I just wanted to start with the revenue part first to show where we were coming from and being able to justify the increase.
Okay.
So then, as you said, there are a couple of pieces. Obviously, in the salaries, we're looking at two parts to that. One, just the cost of living increase for most of them, and then the board had looked to, the classification study, I guess, for lack of a better term, what the town has been using. There were several positions that we hadn't officially classified ourselves and gone through. So we did that. That was the director of golf, the golf pro, the superintendent, and an assistant course superintendent. We rated those. And 3 of the 4, if we were to implement it, justified a little bit more than a cost of living increase to put them onto that scale. So this request, whether that goes through or not, we figured worst case scenario, so to speak, budget-wise, we would calculate where that would put them, and that's included in here. So that's why on a couple of them, like say on the top line, director of golf, it shows 5.6%. Because if we were to implement the study, that's where it would put him. So we're not saying, that that's official as of now, but as far as this point in our first request, we wanted to say what would the worst case scenario be. And we did that with that position, the Isaac, the pro, and then the assistant superintendent. The course superintendent already fell in line once we rated him with what his salary range was. There was no further adjustment needed there.
So you said on the director of golf, it was up, I don't know what you said, 5% or what. I only have a 2.9% on my spreadsheet. Am I missing something?
I concur with Chairman Gaspar there. I have 2.9%.
Well, I've got the same. Let's see, 66. Oh, I think because in your FY21 budget, I think is actually, for whatever reason, it's slightly different than what my budget is. What I have, I'm not sure if the difference is between his actual pay and budgeted pay. I was looking at what I thought was his actual versus actual, not last year's budget. So I apologize for reading out a number from my spreadsheet.
Yeah, it's just the fiscal year 21 town meeting vote. That's really the number that you go with, right? I mean, I see the actual, but that's fiscal year 20.
Right. So the number. Yeah. So the number, I'm sorry, Kevin. So the number in the request matches what I'm looking at here, the 68,494.
Okay.
So that's it. So that makes it look better then, right? So we got 2.9% instead of the number that I put out there.
Yeah. I was just getting concerned because some of the other ones are some further increases. But I know that you guys went, I don't, Dave, I'll tell you this. I mean, I remember Roger did something with I guess maybe Mr. Noble with some of that wage and class stuff. And I don't know how that all worked out with the committee and how they were instructed to utilize things. And I think, it's the golf committee's doing what they need to do and looking at and recognizing employees. I would just ask that if this kind of, above and beyond what normally we would be on trend to do. I get it all. It would just be, Julie, you had some concerns about where the numbers were coming from with me last week. So I would just ask that if these kind of things are going on, maybe Julie, it could be better explained through the town administrator and to make sure that we're on par and we're doing the right things here. I understand the $2 increase will get you to where you need, but there's a cutoff where we can charge and charge and charge before you run out of capital from raising fees to pay for increases, especially when it comes to salary. So I'm not saying it's wrong, David. I'm just, I seen the numbers and I kind of was taken back a little bit. That's all. And I'm sure you guys can justify it, but I think it should. Ms. Hebert, you want to say something on that?
Yes, so I would say in terms of the wage and class, I think, and again, we did the initial wage and class quite a while ago. And I know that these four were individuals or positions that just kind of got dragged along and it took a while to get the wage and class completed. So I would say, if it's okay with the board, David, if you can give us like all of the info that you guys use to generate like what grade and step the individuals would be on, I think that would be helpful for us to have as background. And I believe the board voted it the last time, so I would assume that they should vote it again to make it part of the official wage and class. And then obviously I think whatever the board looks at doing for COLAs would be across the board too. So once we have that info and we can see what the new grade and step puts them at, we can apply the COLA across the board when that's decided.
Oh, exactly. I just want to point out that I know that in order for it to be enacted, it would need to be accepted and then approved. But as a first start with, again, a worst case quote, budget figure, that would be the highest we'd be at. We wanted to make sure that we could even get there if we needed to or wanted to, and then back off from there. So again, if it ends up being just the cost of living for everybody, that could be fine as well, but I wanted to see where it would put us. And I do know that we had created a chart of what every position was ranked at and how it came out. I apologize. I thought it was forwarded to you guys down there, but if it's not, I know that Mr. Isaac has it and we can certainly get it to you.
Okay, and I'll speak again on I know Mr. Gasper brought it up, but I appreciate the revenue and the fact that you're looking at that, because this is something that we've talked about from a finance standpoint for the DOR in order for us to have our tax rate set. And I think, Mr. Flynn, we've had this conversation in the past, so I'm really grateful that you guys are looking at this. In order for the DOR to accept any budget, including an enterprise fund, they're self-sufficient. They need proof that you're going to meet the revenues that you say you're going to meet. So, I appreciate that you guys are actually looking at that and putting in a justified effort to prove out this is how we're going to get that additional revenue, because I know the DOR will look for it later on if this budget is approved as is. So thank you.
Gentlemen, you have any questions? I mean, on the first page that really captures salaries, and then the operating budget goes to the next page. So if we're all done with that conversation, if you guys have any questions, comments, concerns, Selectman DeRoche, you had your hand up before.
Yeah, I have a few questions. Good evening, David. How are you doing tonight?
Good, thank you.
Good. Hey, first question I have, I know last year or this year still is an epic year. How much above did you think the course is going to generate?
We were well over $100,000 beyond expectations when we had closed down in December.
Okay.
With the warm weather looking like it's coming up that we can open up soon, March is always a bonus, right? I mean, I know I got an email that they walked the course yesterday. The ground was still frozen in spots, especially the shady areas. So you got to be careful of turf damage. But if looking at the forecast, if we can open up in the next week or so and continue to have nice weather, even if we only met the old plan, so to speak, for the spring season, that 100,000 would carry forward and we would be in a great position by the end of the year. I apologize, I don't have the year to date in front of me on my printout, but when I looked at it at one of our prior meetings, it was above that figure.
Yeah, that's fine, Dave. We appreciate that. We can have you in at an upcoming. We're trying to get through the budgets as
Right.
best we can to pass forward to FinCom so they can do their business over there. So we're prepared for town meeting, but we can surely have you in. I think Selectman Wonar in the past wanted to. We talked about it. Try to get you guys in, give us an update of where we've been, where we're at and all that stuff. And it was really helpful back in the day when we used to bring you guys in and we'd shoot the breeze about the golf course and, average rounds and your projections and things like that. It was nice to give the board that heads up and something to be able to look at and capture a picture. So we can do that we can do that in the future, no problem.
Right,
Mr.
because the only
Wallace?
comment I would have to say as I went through the budget, did we make enough money last year to throw a little bit more at our long-term debt principal on the course? You know, just, you know, I don't know what the final numbers are coming in, but paying down the principal on the course is something, you know, that I would consider at least throwing a little bit of money at. So,
I'm not sure. I mean, Julie would know better. I'm not sure if it's like a mortgage where you can pay extra on it. I would, you know, it's quite honestly, my intent is the extra funds, extra, so to speak,
mhm.
would be to address, say, more equipment and infrastructure needs that maybe in the past we would pay for over time, or lease equipment. Maybe now we just buy it instead of getting into recurring payments for something, especially, you know, I know one of the Kubota tractors is almost 20 years old. So instead of, say, leasing to own or bonding, if you could just knock that off as a one-time expense and then not buy another tractor for 15, 20 years, to me, that's a good use of, say, kind of one-time excess revenue coming in as well, and it'll help the equipment situation. Certainly things like the golf carts that get beat up, they're always turned over every 4 to 6 years. So that might not be a good investment to, say, buy the golf cart fleet, but certainly equipment with a longer lifespan would be more my interest.
Okay.
Yep.
Well, very good. Thank you.
Mr. Wona, you want to say something?
I do, yeah, thank you. First of all, Mr. Flynn, good seeing you again, and please pass along my thanks and congratulations to the committee and to the personnel. As I just mentioned earlier, you know, during the pandemic, we had all facets of town government operating to provide a good product for our taxpayers. And I look at the golf course as similar, right? You guys could have gone one of two ways. You could have said, you know what, we're going to play it safe and be very conservative with our approach. But you all made a calculated risk to look at the trends and see if you could utilize the golf course to provide recreational opportunities for our residents and people around here. And I think you made the right decision. And this brings me to my next point. I know we're talking about COLA and things of that nature for our personnel, but I do feel that it's not an apples to apples comparison. I mean, the responsibility of generating revenue for the town, I think is a different, it's got to be looked at differently than other departments or other functions that we have put in, you know, the job study for. And that's not to minimize other employees, but, you know, the director of golf and the golf pro, they're on the hook for raising revenue, right? And so if they don't do that, they are judged accordingly. And so I don't know, are we precluded as an enterprise fund from providing merit bonus opportunities for key personnel who not only make their number, but exceed the number? And I don't know if you've thought about that, but I just look at what makes our golf course work, I think, is the experience of the team, the experience of the management committee, but also the personnel. Well, Dana's been there for what, 15 years? You know, Steve has been superintendent for, it has to be what, north of 10 years. And so I just want to make sure that we're doing right by our employees. The performance dictates that, and there's opportunities to recognize that, because if we were in a situation where we had inexperienced folks, when this thing shut down, we might not have had the outcome that we had. So I just say that as something to think about. And then I really would love to work or have Julie or this board work with the golf course management committee on what our master plan is for the next 5 or 10 years in the way of capital improvements, you know, the rounds. We did the study years ago, and we've updated that. And so I think it would be great to have a master plan for the golf course moving forward.
I appreciate that, David. To be honest, we in the committee have had that same conversation about, you know, almost a like an incentive for how well the course does. And I see that applying to mainly, you know, 3 positions, the director, the pro, and maybe even the course superintendent. The rest of the, you know, workers, and I don't mean that in a negative way at all. I mean, they show up and do their job, but they do their job every day. And, you know,
The level of responsibility.
It counts for the overall experience of the course, but I think those 3 especially could potentially be, you know, rewarded with an extra good year. And then I don't I'm not 100% positive. I don't think there'd be anything, illegal about structuring a contract that way, as long as the funds were still there and appropriated to pay it if they were earned it.
If I could just make, I understand the model. The only concern that I would flip to everybody to consider is it's not our only enterprise fund. We have water and sewer as well. So once you start doing things for one, you get caught in that trap of doing for others. So you have an enterprise fund for water and sewer. And once they catch wind that we're building that into a business model, I get it. I surely do get it, right? It's done in the private sector a lot. Bonuses are based on, what you've done for me in the corporation to make me grow and grow my business. And based on how much money I'm making, I can give certain bonuses, and that's great. I would just want to be very careful as a municipality doing that here in the municipality, in the public sector, but I surely definitely get it. When you have a guy like Mr. Wona said, Dana, for instance, I'll just use Dana out there, he's out there hustling and bustling and doing his thing. And he's got the, those, what do you call those big shows that you guys do out there, Dave? The big
The outings and
the outings, right?
Oh, I'm sorry.
And you're out here and the guy's booking, we did 5 last year and the guy books 10 and we're bringing it, and that's great. It's having that incentive plan. We just got to be careful of how we structure that in the future, but I'm open. I'm all ears.
If you want to move to the next page for the expenses or.
Yep, operating budget, go.
Right, so there are a couple of figures that look like large percentage increases. I know that it was mainly Ed and Manny went through line by line with Steve on the operations side, at least, as to what needed, say, increases due to either known cost increases, things that we want to do, things where we could cut back on a little bit. Like repair and maintenance, buildings and grounds. Looks like 66%. I mean, it's only $2,000. You look back at your actual expenses a couple prior years, it was around $5,000 each year. The maintenance of rentals and leases, 106%. That's because if I'm not mistaken, that is the one that is renting the equipment to aerate the entire course, because we don't own that equipment and they don't necessarily do that every year. So I think this is the off year, off meaning the year to actually do it. So that's put back in for this year. And then communications and advertising, I think we were looking for the bang for the buck. What were we getting out of it? What were some of the promotions available in print and on radio? And, Dana felt comfortable that 8,000 would be okay for this year coming up, especially looking, the last time we spent anywhere near that much was FY18. The past prior years were only 2,500, 3,000, haven't even spent much this year. So Dana felt comfortable with that. And then you see, so like maintenance and seed, 15% increase, really only $1,000, but some of those things are just the nature of the beast with the chemicals and the seeds and the fertilizers and the wetting agents. Those have all been going up, and Steve has been doing a good job of squeezing down what he can, buying in bulk when he can. But he's just felt that the information we're getting from our suppliers is that those certain things are going to be going up in price this year. You hope that they don't, but you want to plan that if he needs to go out and buy something, address something that's happening, that he can get the chemicals he needs at that point in time.
Yeah, I think you hit the nail right on the head, Dave. I mean, you look at an increase, some of the ones you're talking about, it looks like a 20%. Wow, that's big, but it's $1,000, right? In the grand scheme of things, for the size of your budget, $1,000 is really irrelevant.
Yeah. And then, the golf cart lease has a big figure that had to do with, and I know that's coming up later on your agenda as well. It's like, I think refinancing the way that was structured and replacing some of the carts that weren't replaced on the last round of the carts. So it's really just getting the, the annual payment kind of back to where it had been at one point in time anyway, and the turning over the fleet. And I know that they were redoing the paperwork because the first round from the leasing agency had us returning the carts instead of having ownership of the carts if we wanted to at the end without any residual value. So that's what made that go up a few $1,000s.
David?
Yes.
I want to make sure I have the same number that you do for that with the increase included. We have 54,125 right now. Is that right? Or should that increase with the new lease?
Let's see what, Ed, I'm sorry,
If we need to check in and do it in the off
I know
Okay.
Ed had emailed, I've got it in this pile somewhere. But I think that was the correct number for that last time.
Okay,
So I don't want to hold you up needlessly here. I can go through the pile of paperwork Ed sent to me.
yeah, if you find that it's different, just let me know and I'll update everyone.
I think if just looking at the numbers real quick, it looks like it coincides with the 14,000 number that's in the golf cart, at least for the 14 and then the 1, right?
Mhm.
Yes.
It looks like those numbers would correlate pretty well to each other, so neither here or there, that's fine.
Well, then, obviously the third page brings you to the debt, principal, which that is what it is. Then the grand scheme down the bottom is round figures, $40,000 for 2.7%.
Mr. Flynn, how much do we still owe on the golf course? Do you have a general idea?
Well, I know we got what, 2027 or 8 is the last payment. For 2022 at 300,000. If we got 5, 6, 6, either 6 or 7 payments of roughly 300,000.
Okay, so we still owe over $2 million on the course.
I'd say 1.7 to 1.8 million probably.
Okay, 1 point. So, all right.
That depends on if it's 6 or 7 years, right? 6 years would be 1.8, 7 years would be 2.1.
Because I
Right.
believe the way the payments fall, it's kind of weird. Like the last year that we have to make a payment is not a full payment, if I remember the payment schedule. off the
Yeah.
top of my
Mhm.
head. So that's,
Right.
that 300,000 could make a big difference whether it's 6 or 7. I know it's the 2027, 28 years when the last payment is due.
Okay, well, I can go with the 1.8 million. I'll stick with that number. That's fine. So it's 6 more years on this debt that we have. So
Gentlemen, what are we gonna say as far as the golf course budget goes? We good with it? You want to have Ms. Hebert look at some of the numbers as far as that wage and class goes, or are we just good with it?
well, I could look at the wage and class. You know, of all the budgets I've looked at so far, this is the largest increase in salaries that I've seen. Not that
We did, the problem with that is a few years back, other budgets got big boost in some people's salaries, right? Because of that wage and class that, I have my opinion on, wasn't done right. And then I don't think golf course ever really did that kind of practice. So I think that now they're looking at it and saying, let's implement the wage and class. And I think that's what they've done, and they've come up with numbers. And so I guess as long as there's an explanation of town administrator, I'm fine with it.
well, I just bring myself to the salaries that says maintenance employee. I don't know if that one maintenance employee person who's getting a $10,000 bump.
I was actually just going to point
How
out
many, how many employees? Right, I gotta assume
Right.
there's,
No, I was going to
there's
point out
many
that one line,
employees.
that the driver in that one is minimum wage, because a lot of the entry-level equipment operators make minimum wage. So with that going up to 75 cents an hour on a percentage basis, that's a lot more than 2%.
Right,
What's driving?
that's
that
what
big.
I'm asking, because I just had that, I needed to define that line item.
Yep, the wage and
Right.
class was only going to affect the director of golf, the golf pro, and the assistant superintendent. And then all the other ones were just, we put in 2% for cost of living, but then the people who are making minimum wage, we put in the minimum wage increase.
Hey, Dave, with the, I also, guys, I understand, I think with the assistant, correct me if I'm wrong, Dave, but I believe he's retained certification.
The assistant superintendent,
Yeah, the grounds, I think, the grounds guy, the next guy down below, Mr. Tibbles?
correct. Yeah, I believe whether he has his golf course superintendent certification, I'm not sure, but everything as far as running the course, from his pesticide licenses, hoisting license, all of those needed to operate the course, he definitely has all of those certifications.
So again, is there, what do you guys want to do with the golf course budget? I'm inclined to just approve it. And if Ms. Hebert wants to review some numbers, and if there's going to be changes presented to the finance committee, we know that those numbers will go down and not up. I'm fine with it as presented.
Yeah, I agree, Mr. Chairman. I mean, a few months ago, we essentially, outsourced some of our responsibility to the golf management committee to, while we have the final say, I trust their judgment. But I do want to make one distinction when we get into the salaries. I mean, this is not an apples to apples comparison. Any money that goes to the salary of a golf course employee does not come out of taxation. The only way it comes out of taxation is if we don't meet our number and we have to get bailed out. And that has not been the case in the 20 plus years of operation. So I do feel it is a different animal. And, you know, not all enterprise funds are created equal. I do think the golf course, there are much more eyes on the financial performance of the golf course than most town departments. So I'll leave it at that.
Well, I got a little different opinion, but you know, the taxpayers are supplementing the indirect costs associated with the golf course. Pensions and the insurance are being paid by taxpayer money. And, you know, so I would just not want to see every year that the golf course makes money just being directed to salaries increases because the people worked harder and got the, you know, and the course, not that the people didn't work harder, the people come and work, you know, I can't say, you know, I've talked with Dana and Steve Tibbles and course employees there. Exactly. Isaac also. So, you know, that's my only concern is, you know, we not forget about that taxpayer money is being used to supplement the course, which I've agreed to in the past and I will continue to agree to. So that's my only comment on this situation. If you two gentlemen are fine with you know, approving this, the budget, I'm not going to get in your way and stop it at all. So that's my comments. Thank you. So
Go ahead.
No, we can make a motion and I'm with you guys. Okay. You know.
Is there a motion to approve the golf course budget as presented? Given that salaries could change depending on what the outcome is with town administrator.
There's a motion. I'm a second.
All those in favor, roll call vote. Selectman DeRoche,
Yes.
Mr. Wona,
Yes.
and I'm a yes. Mr. Flynn, are you staying with us for, I would ask if you could stay with us for a couple minutes in case there's any questions. You got a golf cart lease approval. I have it here in front of us. I think that's what we were alluding to before, the 14 cars. We were presented with a number roughly 9,000 and change. And because of the vendor misunderstanding of we buy them out at the end of the lease, I think for $1 or something like that. And there was a little confusion with that vendor, but it's all been rectified with Dana. And the new amount comes up to, for each year, $14,732.53.
Correct.
Is there a motion to approve the golf cart lease agreement as presented? Mr. DeRoche?
Yes. So moved. Yes.
I'll second
Mr.
that.
Wona, roll call vote. Mr. Wona?
Yes.
And I'm a yes. So that's all set. Golf Management and Operation Committee, town meeting, article spending. I believe this is past article that was approved, Mr. Flynn.
Yep, this was the article from a year or so's town meeting. And it was just, you know, a couple more things of, you know, infrastructure / capital that we would want to do and take out of that level of funding.
Do you know what's remaining in that article, Mr. Flynn?
Top one, it was roughly 80,000, I believe. The last.
Yeah,
time we
dude,
looked.
but I think we did some spending out of that for infrastructure already.
We did, but I thought prior to doing this, the balance was about 80. So if we spent this 30, it would bring us down to still having about 50,000 remaining.
Julie, you have numbers?
I'm gonna pull it up right now.
I forget what the appropriation was at town meeting floor. Was it that much? We were up like around 100 grand?
I believe so. Unless the 80 was the original, but there were two different ones over the past couple of years. The one in front of me doesn't say, it says from Article 9. It doesn't list which meeting Article 9 was at.
Yeah,
So the one from May of 2019, it had $46,000 left in it for the beginning of this year, and about 33,000 has been spent. So there is, you know, about 13,000 left in that article. And then we just approved an article at this fall town meeting that has 80,000 in it.
Yeah, that one was for 80. So Mr. Flynn, if we could blow out the 13,000 from the 2019 article so we can get that off the books, I think that's the way the town accountant, Melissa Fogg would prefer it, and Ms. Hebert could speak on that a little bit because she was our town accountant.
I was just going to suggest that if there's an older one, why not wipe that out to zero first and then just take the balance out of the newer one?
All right, very good. Gentlemen, you have any questions on just a little bit of work, some isolation valves for the irrigation system? I know we've done a little bit of that in the past. Asphalts for the golf cart pass, number 15. Our DPW will help out and do that. It looks like $9,500, and then a cart path for the driving range / clubhouse. Again, our DPW with their brand new asphalt paver machine.
And I know they've been marking trees to help us remove as well.
Yep.
And this, and like I said, the isolation valves, basically the whole course is one, if you needed to, depending on where you need to do work, the whole system would need to be shut down to isolate something. So now, before they recharge the system for this year, if we were going to address it, now's the time to basically break the course into threes and put in 3 giant isolation valves. So if something major, so to speak, on one of the holes happened, you're only shutting down a third of the course to address it instead of the entire course.
Excellent, excellent. Gentlemen, is there a motion to approve the golf cap article spending as presented? Roll call vote, Selectman Warner,
Yes.
Selectman DeRoche,
Yes.
and I'm a yes. And golf fee increase. I got that. It looks like you want to go $2 across the board?
Yes, except for the resident rate and the junior rate would remain the same. Everything else we would increase by $2, and it would be the first increase in 2 years. And we did ask Dana to, kind of look around, look online, see what other courses were doing to make sure we were at the average, or if anything, just slightly below what we considered to be our competition. Because I think, our draw is always the course and the price. And I run into people all the time that drive over half an hour to come, and they say that, your weekday rate is great. The combination of the rate and the course can't be beat. But, if there's a time to squeeze a little bit, if you look at, I'm not going to name them by name, but some of the other ones fairly close by that are $10 more than us. Well, if they stay the same and they're still $8 more than us, well, then we're still a good deal, and we don't feel that that would really drive people away.
Yeah, great job, Mr. Flynn. I mean, I'm happy that the Board of Selectmen gave the golf committee a little bit more authority to provide some direction out there. And from my understanding, it's really helped out. Not only the mindset of the golf committee, but also the course itself. So great work out there.
Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Warner?
No, I was just going to ask Mr. Flynn, you still have the flexibility to run specials as you see needed, and the agility to adapt to whatever is going on in the market, right? It's not just a total, static.
Well, exactly. And I think either way, if the business wasn't showing up or weather was bad and we wanted to promote, a spring special, I think we would certainly look at that. We've done that in the past. We always try to push the season passes if we can, because it's the best bang for the buck for the buyer. Plus, it also gives us the cash in front and known revenue coming in. So,
Right.
I mean, Dana is always looking at that as well. And then, like I said, especially if a competitor starts to run a promotion, we say, okay, do we need to react to that? Do we need to be close to that? Because we don't want to fall. We don't want to be in a place where we think we're overpriced or the customer thinks we're overpriced, because that's a sure way to get people not to come back.
Right.
Well, Mr. Flynn, for the product that we're offering, I think a $2 increase is extremely conservative. And so I can approve that. I mean, that's not an issue.
And it's, and we just felt too that, for the residents and the juniors, even though it's a small token, I think it's just something to help show the residents and the kids getting them interested, is not to increase that rate and keep that where they've been.
Oh,
Yeah,
most
I think
I'll
that's
take
key.
full advantage of it.
I think that's key, Mr. Flynn. I've heard from a lot of residents, we should have a discount and everything else. So I appreciate that, doing that for the residents. Granted, it's only a couple bucks, but it's something, right?
No, the 35 for the resident is a great price.
Yeah, I agree. All right, is there a motion to approve the rate increase for the golf? Mr. Warner, roll call vote.
Yes.
Mr. DeRoche,
Yes.
and I am a yes. Thank you, Mr. Flynn.
All right, thank you guys. Thank you very much.
Thank you. All right. Going a little bit backwards, Ms. Hebert, I'll just turn this over to you. You got a town of Acushnet job description, part-time administrative assistant, selectman's office. Turn that discussion over to you, Ms. Hebert.
So you guys have before you a job description for the part-time administrative assistant. This is replacing a person that just retired in office. And I did want to put it on the agenda to have a discussion on whether the board would entertain kind of commingling this position with the one we left when Henry left us, the special projects manager position. I think it would be a real help to our department to kind of merge those two positions under one person and kind of have what I would call, say, an administrative, part-time administrative assistant / grants manager or something to that effect. So this person would, help out all the administrative work, help as an assistant for Lisa, also help manage, our town website, any social media that we have or that we will have in the future, hopefully. But again, I think having that grants person in-house, and if that adds a few hours a week to the position, we're looking at, say, 20 to 25 hours a week. So I would say if we added that in there, putting it 25 hours to start, and we can see how it goes from there. But I'd really love for the board to entertain this. I think it would be a huge improvement for us to be able to turn to the person in our own office. And there are a lot of grants that come through on a daily basis. I know we have it as special projects, but I think it would be a huge help for us to make sure that we stay on top of them and don't miss out on any of those opportunities. So if the board would entertain it, I would love to consider that either for now, or if it's something that we need to appropriate for FY22, either way, I would appreciate it.
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
It says in this job description, records, maintains, and files parking and marijuana tickets. What's the deal with that? What's that all about?
You didn't know about that, Kevin?
I don't know anything about it, Mrs. DeRoche. Would you enlighten me?
Okay, so I can kind of fill you in a little bit. The police department does give tickets out, even though now it's recreational marijuana and all kinds of things appropriated for that. But we do give tickets out. If there is somebody at Pope Park and the police department finds them with some kind of marijuana, whatever, they tend to give them a ticket here and there. Not very often, but they do.
So, are we getting in? Why would we be crossing the T's for the police department? I would imagine that would just come as a citation from the police department and end of story.
Well, it does come from this. It does come to the police department, but it comes to the Board of Selectmen's office. We have to keep track of it. As well as the
tickets,
parking.
right? We do all that stuff.
Yes, as well as the parking tickets. It's
Yeah,
just been the job since I've been here, and I don't know how long it's been in our office, but that's how it's been.
All right, I didn't know anything about these kind of tickets. Okay.
Since I've been here, I can tell you, we have had a parking ticket. And I think I'm like the parking enforcement officer or something, and that's why.
Yes, you are.
Yeah, you are. You're the parking ticket enforcement officer. That is correct, Ms. Hebert.
If somebody wants to complain about the ticket, they send a letter and we can try to give them a little hearing and go from there. But that's how it's always been. I mean, we can make changes if people want, but that's how it's been.
No, it's interesting. I didn't know much. I didn't know anything about marijuana tickets, but I knew we did pocket tickets. But anyways,
So it's town
Mr. DeRoche?
administrator who I refer my friends when they call to me and say, "Hey, Dave, I got a parking ticket." I'll say, "Call Julie."
That's great.
Yeah. You guys got any? I mean, I think what she's doing is we've had a part-time person in the office 19 and a half hours. In the past, it's worked out really well when we actually, I know COVID-19 has done different things to all of us in the workplace, not just here in town government, but everywhere. And we were very successful in the past with 19 and a half hours. And I think there are a couple of little things that she's added in here, perform similar related work directed as or as situations dictate, including special projects, and then the manages the town's president in social media and maintains all town related web pages. There's a few things. I mean, it's kind of, I've looked through it. It looks like, again, it's part-time administrative assistant. So it looks like it's a duplicate over what we already have, but that's what that 19.5-hour job really always has been. We staff that position, Selectman Wona, you know, it was like a 10 to 2 slot and to cover lunches. And so we'd always have somebody in the office. Ms. Hebert's asking for 5.5 more hours. I have no problem for the few additional hours for that position. Gentlemen, any comments?
No, I think the additional hours will help us catch up on the 20 hours a week we're losing right now by not having anybody in the position. So
I'm good. Mr.
Well,
Wona.
you know me, gentlemen, I like to push the envelope. I just asked the question, if you're in for 25 hours, is that going to cover it? I mean, if we're going to make this type of commitment, you know, just in my experience since I've been back on the board, and this isn't a slight to anybody in the office, I feel like because we're maxed out on so many other things, that we do miss out on opportunities. And I feel that the volume of work, but also, again, speaking to opportunities, even if it's just serving constituents, think about it. We're now in a social media world. We've got things like All Things Acushnet. There's social media things where constituents are talking about issues or complaining about issues or need things fixed. We need personnel to have those things taken care of. There may be times when it's really busy. There may be times when not so. But I would, you know, I'm advocating for, you know, do a real gut check. If you feel 25 hours is what you need right now, then I'll go on that recommendation. But I would say, let's review it after 6 months or whatever and see if we need to take it up a notch. I'm all for investing in personnel and investing in the office and the department to get us where we need to be, because ultimately that's what's going to be best for you. Land one grant, it pays for the position, you know.
Yeah, I couldn't agree. I'm not in the mindset of, you know, as far as the office goes, do we really need 2 full-time when we never had? And I've seen the operation of the Selectmen's department from 2010 to 15. When Mr. Catino was here, we operated pretty much flawlessly in that department. I agree by giving a few extra hours, but I also agree with you, Selectman Wona, to say we look at this over the next upcoming year. And we have that opportunity to reassess in that next budget cycle and say, hey, we know that we have that capacity may be needed, and we boosted the other 10 hours. Because the reality of it is you're spot on, is we're already paying the benefits. Once you go above 19.5 hours, you're paying $15,000 if that person takes benefits, because that's about the size of it for us to cover, the taxpayers to cover it. I would just say, let's see what we get with the 25 hours for a year, or, you know, 6 months, a year. And then we move forward next year and say, hey, we look at Julie and Lisa and say, you know what, how's things working out? We should all know that by then, and say, you know, there's a need to push this the envelope a little further, and we go to 35 hours. That's what we do. But I'm willing to, you know, throw those extra 5.5 hours, whatever. That's what Ms. Hebert's looking for now. And let's see how we make out.
Okay.
All right, I just want to say thank you, because I have work here at home. You know, like I'm on a day, like I'm working late tonight too, and I have all the mail that I have to open because I don't have Rachel anymore. So I thank you. That's appreciative.
Where's our other guy? Did he take off?
Mr.
I think we lost him. I don't even see him on the screen.
Hope he's okay.
I don't want to do
Well, I'll add too, and just say thank you, because no, I agree with Lisa. It's been a rough year between COVID and also, you know, filling in all kinds of gaps. So I do appreciate it. You know, we've managed with the 2 people, but there are a lot of projects, and I would not only like to, you know, catch up and do the basic, but I'd like to do better. And I think, you know, to what you said, Mr. Wona, you know, that's what we should be looking at. And I obviously want to be conservative too. I understand there's a lot that comes along with making a full-time position, and I don't take that lightly, but I do think there are a lot of projects that are going on in town and things that we could involve ourselves in to better the town and the residents. So I think that it would definitely be put to good use if we were to make it full-time eventually. So, but I do thank you guys for considering this tonight.
I'm just trying to get my other selectman back up on the, I don't know what happened to Mr. DeRoche, but
I got a text. He said he lost power. He has to reboot. Could he have a 5-minute recess to get back on?
okay. Is there anything else we can shoot the breeze on here or no? Not really, huh?
If you want, I can go to my town administrator reports. I don't know.
I'd rather
Okay.
let Mr. DeRoche have some input on stuff like that, MVP grant hearings. It's Selectman Warner, I don't see him back, but are you comfortable making a motion to approve? We've gotten a picture of the sign. It's kind of a straight up 3-foot tall sign for the historical Perry Hill sign approval. I look at it. It's nothing that's out of the ordinary for that location. I'm all set. Make a motion to approve.
So moved.
Roll call vote. Mr. Warner, are you a yes? And I am a yes. So we'll just check that one off. We'll let Mr. DeRoche know we approve the sign without him. I don't see anything else we can really get ourselves involved with without Mr.
Chapter 90 is really kind of an announcement.
I'm sorry.
The Chapter 90 funding.
Oh, yeah. So I got 30 copies of an agenda. And so Department of Public Works, I agree. That's all that is. Department of Public Works to let us know that the town's received in Chapter 90 funding for fiscal year 2021 in the amount of $316,796. That's pretty much in line with what we receive every year from the state as far as Chapter 90 funding. So do we have to make a motion to approve it or we just get it?
No, that's just, for information so people know that that's what we have for Chapter 90 money for this year.
Yeah, well, while we're waiting, Dave, you got something you want to talk about?
Yeah, I was going to say, while we're on the subject of the DPW for a future meeting, but sooner than later, maybe we can ask for Dan what his punch list of projects, for the spring and summer. And I asked that only because at some point Lake Street will need some attention of the personnel there, and I just want to make sure that we get in line appropriately, for some of the work there. We've got some pretty exciting things that we want to advance, and we'll rely heavily on the DPW. But I just, I know we're also thinking like Slocum Street and some of these other projects, and I just want to make sure that we'll have, I just want to make sure that we're not barging in on him.
Yep.
Yeah. You got you guys on the Lake Street committee, you guys got some ideas of what you guys are floating around for the area, or?
Yeah, just, I'll give you a little tease. It's initially obviously the water management and getting the ponds cleaned. And we've had some help facilitating some ideas, and really phase one, we'll call it, is a gradual approach. So, aesthetically improving what we're calling the Tom Davis Pond, which is the real small one, right? So we want to have signage at all the 4 quadrants, the Old Town Beach, the South Pond, the Tom Davis Pond, the North Pond. We want to have signage there that delineates, what the depth of the water is at its deepest point, have some safety things, put in some canoe launches, really make that look intentional. And then also the middle area, add some picnic tables and other things that when you see it, you'll notice that there's been some attention to that. And then long-term would be hiking trails and paths and things of that nature. But we felt for phase one, really just, do some things that are really easily to do, that are easy to do, but we just need the personnel and the time to do it. So.
Yeah, sounds good. Who's I don't see Selectman DeRoche, so we can keep talking about Lake Street if you don't mind, Dave.
Yeah, sure. No.
Who's doing the depth of the pond? We just taking somebody and chucking them in there and saying, go down and see what you got?
I don't know. I might sign up firefighter Aruda. He does
diving.
Scuba dive, he does some of that stuff. So Eric may not know he's on the hook for that, but we can do that.
Yeah, well, you know what? It'll give him a good refresher course. He can put his gear on and jump on in.
Yeah.
And bring his 30-yard stick and stick it up in the air when he gets to the bottom and see if we can see it, right?
Yeah, and Julie, maybe again, sorry to Dave's back on, if you could take a note. If somebody wanted to if we wanted to allow food trucks or something along those lines, would that be like a 1-day common vic license? And if it's not something we have, then maybe at some point the board, we can discuss that and advance a bylaw, but there's opportunity, I think there's some fun opportunities to do that. I'm just not aware of, I'm just wondering if there's any impediments to that.
Yeah, we got, I think they call like peddler licenses or something like that. We've done a couple, Dave.
Okay, right.
I know there's a couple that we've approved in the past for them to be able to run around with the trucks and things like that. I don't know if that one's called a peddler license but we'll look, Julie and Lisa Leonard, she'll know. We have made a few approvals, so I think that's pretty cool. If we can get somebody out there on the, in the summer months with a food truck.
Right, even if it's a hot dog stand, something, so anyway.
Yes. We can totally do hawkers and peddlers licenses.
Yeah,
They have to apply to the state first and then they come to us. They have to go to the police department and make sure the Corey things are all set and stuff like that, but we can definitely do something like that, yeah.
Okay, great. All right, thank you.
All right, I'm back.
We were just talking a little bit. We did a couple of things without you, Selectman DeRoche. We approved the historical Perry Hill sign approval. You didn't have any problems with that, did you?
Not at all.
And then we just talked about what we got in Chapter 90 funding as well.
Very good.
And then Selectman Wona was giving us a little briefing on some of the things that he wanted to discuss with DPW over Lake Street, some projects, and trying to fit in some little projects for the DPW, but figuring out all the other things that Mr. Menard's doing with the crew over the next year and trying to accommodate some time to get out there to Lake Street and help out and cleaning up that property a little bit and doing some things for the Lake Street Committee. No
Very
votes.
good.
No votes are taken outside of the approval of the Perry Hill signage, Mr. DeRoche.
Okay.
All right.
All right. Very good. Thank you for your time.
So we lost you, Dave, and Mr. DeRoche, and I think we'll make a motion, Julie, to approve increase to 25 hours for the part-time position in the Board of Selectmen's office, if that's warranted.
Yeah, and if it's okay as well, I'd like to add to this job description, just clarify, grants as well, just a little piece to say, we'll work on grants for the town.
Sure. I mean, well, I ain't gonna go back to my book and flip to that page, but I think you had something basically in there covering that little thing was, I said, I labeled as new and new. So that's fine. If you want to add that, responsible for grant, submission of grant applications or whatever you want to put, Julie, it's fine. Mr. DeRoche, roll call vote. You a yes?
Yes.
Selectman Wona?
Yes.
And I'm a yes.
Yeah.
All right. Hopefully, once we get back without all the CARES Act and taking up Miss Hebert's time, I know she spends a lot of time with that paperwork between FEMA reimbursements, CARES Act reimbursement, flipping the money around. We should be good to go. So the next conversation we have on the agenda, I see there, solar pilot agreements discussion. Anybody?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I'd ask that we revisit this issue, not necessarily because I'm in favor or against the pilot program, but I guess if I understand, town meeting passed a bylaw several years ago, essentially authorizing the Board of Selectmen to negotiate pilot projects, pilots as it pertains to solar. And, I just want to get a read on that. I know years ago, Mr. Gasper, when we were on the board together prior to adopting what we refer to as the Gasper legislation on the solar stuff, which fenced off the money, we were sort of philosophically opposed to the pilots because of it being the solar being a depreciating asset. But now I feel like we're in a better position to look at pilots, on a case-by-case basis, and at least signal to a proponent that we'd be willing to talk to them. For instance, we've got one solar developer who has 4 projects in town, and if they were all to move forward, that's significant tax revenue to the town. And I do know enough about the industry that pilots can be more advantageous for the proponent because with the bank, right? Because things are locked in. And so I just want to get a read from it's one of those things that's been hanging out there, and, you know, want to get a feel where we want to go with this. And is this something that when somebody does apply for a solar permit, we then there's a questionnaire that says, you know, do you plan to submit a pilot or something along those lines? So we then can game plan for it. We may decide that we think it's a terrible idea, but in some instances, it might be good for us, you know?
Yeah. So I'll comment on that because I seen this on the agenda and I was curious, but we just approved, this board approved somewhere in the realm of $2.5 million for the school roof. And we said, we got revenues coming in, and we got certain revenues in the bank from solar, it's a solar capital fund, and we got future projects on the hook, and da-da-da-da-da. We know that the 15-year plan borrowing, I think it was $1 million, Julie, of our 50% apportionment. And we know that we would do something as far as a down payment on that finance to get that finance and meet those target goals. So we wouldn't do a debt exclusion. So here's where I'm at on solar pilots. I think that we know what we did before, Selectman Warner, and you're right. We created that special legislation, and that solar capital fund is there. And I get it. And that's why what we did. And I think it was great that we did that. The only thing, if I was going to do a solar pilot, because we are using that funding to fund the school roof, what I would say is this. Yeah, I'm definitely open to that conversation. And we would still take the money and put it in the solar capital fund, because what the pilot does, for everybody at home that doesn't understand, is we would do, I don't know if we can change the terms to less than 20 years and maybe do 15 years or 20 years. Our borrowing, we propose doing a 15-year on the school roof. We need to keep that money in the bank, right? So we pay for it and we don't have to do a debt exclusion for the taxpayers. I would say, let's get something done from the assessor's office, Ms. Hebert, and break it down. We'll use an example of one maybe that we've already got on the books and say, this is what it's valued at. This is what we captured in year 1, 2, 3, and 4. What does that look like when we break it out over 20 years? And I think Selectman Warner, you know as well as I do that if it's, we'll call it $10,000 a year over 20 years. We capture that money, we put it in the solar revenue fund because we got a commitment on that school roof that we pay for that. I'm fine with that. I think that might be a good way for us to secure that loan, in other words, from the school roof.
Yep.
So in this circumstance where we're looking to guarantee that payment and not do which we already didn't do, a debt exclusion, you can't really do it because it would take 2 votes, one by town meeting and one by the ballot, and both would have to pass. So we're with a plan, I think, to go on that solar pilot plan. I'm interested in at least entertaining the conversation to see what does that look like if we did something with somebody, a solar farm out there over 20 years. And maybe it's multiple ones that we do to lock in that funding so we secure that payment on the school roof. And we're done.
Right, because what I think, as I understand it, rather than for the developer having a front-loaded tax payment years 1, 2, 3, and 4, and then winding down to nothing, or a smaller payment, this essentially gives us the ability to lock in a payment over the course of those 20 years that we can rely on. So I think in this instance with the roof, it does make sense, So anyway.
Yep. I mean, it definitely does. And it locks in that, it goes, we still capture the revenues the same way, take it off the recap sheet. Ms. Hebert, you with me?
Oh, yeah.
We still get the taxation. We take it, we move it off the recap sheet like we do now. We keep it in the solar capital fund. And we know that there's a certain percentage of whatever we have in that solar capital is going to pay principal and interest on the school roof, right?
Yep. And I would say if you want to put this on another meeting, I can have the assessors give that breakdown. And I also know our town council, Jeff Blake, he has a specialty in pilots. And I know a lot of the solar the solar projects will say they're exempt from certain taxes. And he's done presentations for like MMA before. So I know he said if we need him to come and do a quick presentation so that we have a better understanding of, what's involved with the solar project pilot agreement, what stuff they're exempt from and what a good payment plan would be. He's been willing to do that. So we could kind of do a side meeting on just pilots if you guys wanted to.
I think it would be great. It'd be a good refresher.
Julie, then, I would just ask this simple question. I mean, instead of wasting everybody's time, if Jeff Blake has for instance, example for us, a 1 megawatt solar field, this is what the assessed valuation is based on, and this is how the pilot would work. I think that would be great to get to the board, and that would be the determining factor. We could definitely talk about that. I think that's key, is to understand how it works. We got to go to town meeting and get this approved, Dave.
But right, see, that's the other issue, right? Is that the one thing is that we've got to, if we're going to do something along these lines, then we have to time it in a way where you only get two bites at the apple to really approve it. I mean, ultimately, it requires town meeting approval. If we do a town meeting in the fall, and then obviously our annual town meeting. So I think it behooves us to try to get this squared away, whether we want to do something or not. If we don't, that's fine too.
Dave, when you brought this up, are current applicants asking for pilots? Because I know there's about 7 or 8
I know
solar farms on the planning board agenda right now.
I don't know that a formal request has been made. An inquiry was made of me. How does the board feel of pilots? And I said, to be honest with you, I don't know. And that's why I wanted to advance the issue.
So if I can, I've received emails from various solar projects, forwarded them along each time, but let them know that at this time the selectmen, I mean, this is going back months and years ago. At the time, the selectmen weren't interested in entertaining the solar pilots, but I did pass on the info. But yeah, I think they are all interested in pilot agreements, because
a lot
again,
has to do with some of the new rules and regs and laws that have been passed.
Yep.
And I think to bounce off of that, I think my opinion, I'm open to that discussion just because of the way the Board of Selectmen had structured the financing on the school roof. We need to secure that and let our residents know that that's secured, fined, and we're good to go. And the board took proactive measures to make sure we secured that payment over the next 15 years. And I think the Selectman Wona's point, if it's a 20-year pilot, we're behind that scope of the borrowing by 5 years. We're good to go.
Right.
So I'm good. I'm all ears to see what it looks like on paper. I don't think we need to do any kind of vote, right?
No, but I can just note it so we can put it on a future agenda and have Jeff Blake kind of give us a rundown.
Yep, and if, to keep that meeting as short as we can, I mean, if you can get something, if he's got anything that's already been documented, you said he did things for MMA and Mass Municipal Association with all of you that are at home. If he's got any kind of template, if you could forward over to members of the Board of Selectmen, to take a good look at it and get a little affiliated with that document before we go into a meeting, so we're not sitting around for an hour discussing a 20-year payment plan. And I think we can get through that meeting relatively quickly, right? I know that any vote, I think the bylaw, I think it was a bylaw that we changed, wasn't it, Julie, for solar?
The special legislation.
No. The one for the pilot programs that Mr. Wona just said, we did it a couple of years ago.
It was just an article that gave the selectmen authorization to negotiate the pilot agreements.
Right, but I think, all right, so in that agreement, I think it forces us back to town meeting.
Yes.
We can ultimately say yes, but we got to take that agreement to town meeting and explain it to the town meeting folks, right?
Final approval is by town meeting only. So
Right,
you
no
can
problem.
negotiate in good faith, and then town meeting has to vote to approve it.
Yep, no problem. All right, you guys good with that?
Works for me.
I see some CWMP sewer betterment plan discussion timetable. The other agenda said something about making it go to town meeting. I don't really know. I didn't ask for this. I think Julie, maybe somebody from Woodward and Curran might have put this up on this thing, but I can just speak on this really quick. And I've spoke on it before. Selectman DeRoche, you were on the board with Mr. Cabral when we did the so-called sewer summit. This was the CWMP was passed with opposition on 2016, and I was a big proponent of passing it back on back tax collections. It was free one-time expense. We got it to happen on town meeting floor. Basically, looking at this, what this proposal is, it's, in my opinion, it's, if this is, we had two phases, Selectman Warner, identified by Woodward and Curran. Roughly 300 residents south of Century House over there to the border of Fairhaven. And then from the Nice Lane, Acushnet Public Library Community Center down to the police station, roughly another 300 residents. And I said pretty adamantly to everybody, so everybody would understand, this is not something that should be put on a regular town meeting. So that 60 people from the other side of town that doesn't impact that cost should be voting to give me or anybody else, in this case, a $43,000 bill. Thank you very much. So I think if this board in the future was to consider, and there's going to be a right time, I'm not sure this, I know this town meeting is not it, because we would have, in my vision, we would have a separate town meeting. If we knew we were going for the phase from Nice Lane to the police station, you would send out notices, almost like with a butters list, to all of those people that would be potentially impacted by sewer phase, get them into the room. And we can't do that with COVID restrictions right now if 200 people out of 300. So we're not prepared for this. And that's there's no other implementation of the CWMP other than getting town meeting voters, those that are impacted, to approve a sewer phase. Mr. Menard came into us a while back. I think it was over that sewer summit, and we've done extensive work on him. Us doing it in-house, perhaps hiring some additional staff for like a 2-year period to go in and help out and do this. And his numbers were somewhere around $15,000, $17,000 a household. In recent conversations, we think we could probably drive that number lower. But this proposal here, I took that $12,989,000 number for whoever did this work. I think it was done by Woodward and Curran. 13 million bucks divided by 300 residents, that comes out to $43,000. Who in their right mind's putting sewer in for $43,000 plus additional yearly costs? Nobody, right? We've done it. 2008 was the last sewer phase done by the Board of Public Works. The Board of Selectmen took it over in 2014. And that sewer phase, I believe, ran those in 2008, ran those people right around the 14,000 threshold. So, you know, kudos to the board if we can get our DPW and somehow administer this so we could do this in-house, and we could keep that number. Even if we kept that number in line with the 2008 number, that's pretty phenomenal to give that option to the taxpayers where we need it. But again, I would never, and I think that was some of the problem with 2008, never in a million years would I push a debt load like this on any taxpayer in the town of Acushnet without being properly vetted to those people in that phase. That's the only way for myself to honestly do this with the taxpayers of Acushnet and make that sales pitch to them. There's a right way and there's a wrong way. And I believe the right way to do it is just identify those users, send them notices about the meeting, give them that opportunity to show up. We do a presentation to those residents, and you know, if they approve it, they approve it. If they don't, it's dead. And then you would have to take the next opportunity and maybe go to the next phase, which would be out south of Century House, in that area to the Faven line. But I don't know what you gentlemen want to talk about. I've seen it on the agenda, but there's really no other way of implementing CWMP without growing sewer phase. Ms. Hebert?
So if I can, it's on the agenda because Woodard and Curran applies for the SRF loans for us, and we need to kind of make a decision if we think we'll have it. Obviously, as you said, this springtime meeting is too early to have any kind of discussion or put this on a warrant. But if we want to have it on a fall town meeting, we would need to let Woodard and Curran know, because then we would keep, in line with the SRF program for this year. They've applied for us. If we're not going to do it, then they would prefer to see us back out and allocate the money for another town rather than save it for us. Then we don't use it. It's a bad optic. So that's why it's here. Is if you're looking to maybe put it in on the fall, then either way, Woodard and Karn would like to know so that they can act appropriately.
Yeah, I know it's got to do with that SRF, I think it's sewer revolving fund. That's at like 2%, 2.5% or whatever. And then if we lock that position and we don't go and do it, we could be screwing another community. But how do we get, when I know that each phase, and Mr. DeRoche knows there's 300 people in each phase roughly, with COVID-19 right now, we can't get 100 people in a room, let alone 300. I'm not saying all 300 people are showing up, but expect 50%. That's 150 people.
Chairman,
Mr.
if I
DeRoche.
could suggest this. Look, I haven't, in the 6 months I've been back on the board, I haven't had one person call me or text me or say, hey, you know what, we need to have sewer, right? And so if this is something that we have an interest because we feel it's in the town's long-term best interest, then what I would advocate for is after town meeting, we send out a survey to the 300 or so residents south of Main Street, the 300 or so residents in this other proposed area, to say, very carefully worded so nobody, can misinterpret it, that we are considering, do you feel you have an interest? And if we get 0 for 300 or there's a small percentage, then I think that we don't need to get people all worked up in a frenzy. In the area around, Hamlin Street, in that area, Nyes Lane, that could spur a ton of growth that we might not be ready for, right? And perhaps, having septic, that is a way of controlling some growth. And if you look at the average septic system, you're looking at somewhere between $10,000-$14,000 to put a new system in. Now in areas where you're unable to perk or whatever, that's another story, right? So anyway, we just got to look at it. It's a lot easier. It's not as easy as just saying, hey, we want to do sewer. There's a lot of factors.
I know, and it is. It's I've talked to some folks that are in that business. 20 grand for a septic system. And that's if you don't need the fancy pants one, and they got all kinds of new septic systems, the Brisbee, I think it's called, and it's crazy, but the average cost of a septic system is 20 grand. So, you got to look at it. And I think that's where our exercise comes in. But I like that idea, Selectman Wone, is maybe you do that communication out to those two areas and just see what the appetite is, see what kind of feedback you get,
I would do it after town meeting because you don't want to start confusing people,
Yeah, no, I agree. I 100% agree. But, again, I think that's a good idea, is maybe you send that communication out and see what kind of responses you get. I know it's difficult to say, just asking them, I think you're right. You just a blanket question. Are you interested in sewer in your area? And don't put any price tag on it, because right now we don't know the price tag, right? So if there's that appetite, enough people respond yes, depending on the price. I mean, you could even do that, right, Dave? You could say, at what price are you interested in? 10,000, 15,000, 20,000, and you get the feedback, and somebody can go through that and say, well, they're good all the way up to 15, and after that, we're screwed.
Right.
So maybe we should just, start considering that this project is not going to happen. Because 10 years ago, when this was brought up, it was less expensive. Now I got an email from Dan, the DPW, said 17 grand, as Mr. Gaspar explained, per house. If we keep putting it off for 3 or 4 or 5 years, that number is going to escalate accordingly. So, I think the question is even deeper. Do we want to keep continuing putting this on the agenda and having it out there? I do agree. Yeah, let's send out a questionnaire to the residents, but what resident is going to say they want it if we say it's going to cost you 20 grand? So I just have to weigh that out between the pressure from the state, who is telling us that we need to start cleaning up our act and getting rid of the septic and going towards sewer, and what's going to be appropriate to, when do we pull the trigger on it?
Yeah, that was, I don't think the state's putting any pressure on us. That's That's an,
and I'm-
that's,
and
an-
I'm
that's, an-
completely okay with bringing it to town meeting and have the people vote. And if they say we don't want it, well, then it's over. And we move on from there. You know, I mean, we bring this up. I've been on the board now. This is going to be my beginning of my 3rd year. And this was already an issue before I even got on the board. So
hold on.
okay.
That's not a true statement. The
It's not a true statement.
CWMP,
I
the
mean,
CWMP
my
was,
opponent-
the
okay.
CWMP, Dave, wasn't finalized until 6 months, 12 months ago. That's first and foremost. So it hasn't been that long. It was approved to spend and do the CWMP in 2016. I told you I did that on town meeting floor against a lot of opposition, and I got the residents to pass it with the one-time revenue from back tax collections. And the reason why I pushed to have that done is because we're 90% residential base for taxpayers. So the burden is of the budget is 90% on residential tax payers. And I said, if we can approve the CWMP, it would allow us to go in and do sewers in areas where perhaps we could get some growth, and hopefully that would be commercial growth to offset some of that tax burden on the 90% of you folks that are paying the burden of the budget. And it was just approved by us in DPW. I think it was probably no more than 12 months ago. The actual document was approved.
Right. No,
So we're ready to, we're ready. What that says is the town's ready to go, because the other thing I said to the town meeting voters is back in 2008, when the DEP let us do that sewer phase, we told them that we were, and I have that document somewhere at home, we told DEP, let us do this, and we promise we're going to do that, and we'll get this done. And we never did it. And that was 8 years later, so it was time to do it. We did it. We passed it. We kept that commitment to DEP. At least some of us did in passing that CWMP, and here we are now. I'm just saying, there's no such thing as implementation of CWMP until you get a sewer phase approved by town meeting voters. And those town meeting voters should only be those people in the room that are impacted by that increase in that betterment charge.
Well, I'm sure if we brought this up to town meeting, those 319 households would show up. You know, no matter if we got a 10-person quorum or whatever, if it's going to cost them $17,000, they're going to be there to voice their opinion.
Right. And
Yeah.
That's my only comment is
We had concerns a couple of weeks ago about the warrant and passing some zoning changes with a low quorum, we want to do something that might impact 300 residents, and you're going to have them storm that cafeteria. You can't fit them in the room with COVID-19 restrictions. That's all I'm trying to say. Yes, we should be doing this at some point. But I don't think right now with COVID-19 restrictions, seeing our town buildings aren't even open, and we're going to say blast the cafeteria in school building to have a town meeting, I don't think that's appropriate.
Well, Mr. Chairman, my only point is this ultimately comes down to the residents, the 319 households who are going to be directly affected by a sewer being put in their neighborhood. And it's up to them to decide. Now, whether I bring it this meeting, next meeting, other town meeting, you know, I'd just like to address it so we can move forward in our plan for the town. To have this go on for years and years, the cost is only going to escalate. You know, right now we talked about the DPW doing the work themselves and saving millions of dollars having that done. But, you know, in 5 or 7 years, that or whatever, in 2 or 3 years, that whole thing might go out the window, and we're faced with the $43 million or $43,000 per household that Woodward and Curran originally came up with as a cost to implement this project. So
yeah, it's in your book. It's in your book. It's in your book right now. I'm not talking about waiting 3 or 4 years, Selectman DeRoche. I just don't want to be trying to approve a $33 million budget and having a 2-hour conversation with 300 people back and forth about a sewer phase. I think that's done all on its own, and it's on its own merits. And then when we can reopen to a safe degree where we can pack that cafeteria and that auditorium, then the Board of Selectmen can call a special town meeting and just vet out the CWMP and sewer betterment phase, the next phase of sewer. That's how it should be done. That's all I'm saying. I'm not saying I want to wait 3 years. I want to wait until it's safe so that if everybody wants to get in the room, everybody can get in the room. That's all.
Got it. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you.
So that's that. We got Merrill Lee still around for, we're back at the 88 Wing Lane conservation restriction from a solar farm. I think it was a solar farm that went through, goes through this permit list, the state listed species at the National Heritage of Endangered Species in Wildlife concerned with this area, within this area, eastern box turtle, and the various steps the owner needs to take to protect the species both during construction and afterwards. So is Merrill Lee somewhere?
I'm still here. Yes, sir. I'm sorry I don't have a camera.
Merrill Lee,
But-
what's the deal with this conservation restriction? Because it looks like there's a whole bunch of wetlands. They can't really do anything with this property. It's protected by the natural heritage and endangered species program, and they're looking to get the town to do a conservation restriction, which I'm all for. Conservation restrictions of open space and high dry land for hiking and all that stuff, but what's the incentive for us to put a conservation restriction on swamp?
Well, it's not our conservation restriction. It would be, it would belong to the solar company. And,
Okay.
and we would hold it for them, which means that we would be checking on them to make sure that what they say is not happening is not happening. So there is, to make sure there isn't any building going on or anything like that, anybody cutting down the trees and stuff like that. But they're required by natural heritage to have this conservation restriction. So if we don't hold it, then they'll go to somebody else to hold it, probably the coalition or somebody like that.
What does
So-
it cost us to hold it?
It doesn't cost us anything.
And
Occasionally,
it wouldn't cost us.
occasionally you walk the property, that's about it.
Yeah, and what happens if there was, like, they talked about violations, like you can't have, you can't drive a car over it and things of that nature, Merrill Lee. Is there anything, there's no cost associated for us. We just basically say, well, in a conservation restriction, but we don't have to do anything, and no kind of monitoring of that site, because it's a boatload of wetlands in there and all the habitat that's in there. I don't think they can do any more building, right? They have to go in to the National Heritage of Habitat and determine whether it was a take or a no take area to build a solar farm, right?
Right. And Natural Heritage decided it was a take, and that's why they need the conservation restriction.
Okay. So they took a little bit of that habitat to do what they need to do for construction purposes. And then I think it's like 20 something acres remaining. Is that correct?
61.8 acres protected.
So another 6. Yeah. And there's nothing, there's no cost to us. How about I think when we do a restriction, does that take off the tax roll? Because I think Kelly did something over here. I think she put it under our solar pilot. Gentlemen, I don't know if you have the book, but in my book, I think it was stuffed in the solar pilot. It's like a map. And then Kelly, Miss Koska the assessor's office did a breakdown on some valuations. And it looks like the difference in taxes would be like $2,929. Merrill Lee, do you know anything about this tax breakdown? It looks like that's lost revenue for
The town.
No, I don't really know much about the tax revenue, except that it is wetlands, and so it should be assessed that way. I don't know how that compares to a conservation restriction.
I know. I don't know. I don't understand. I didn't understand that either. Why it says difference in tax, real estate only difference in taxes, $2,929. I don't know if she was under the impression that maybe we were taking the 61 acres.
Yeah, I'd asked her to do it out if they had a restriction on it and what that would do for a difference in the taxes. So it could just be that.
What is she's Merrill Lee saying that we're just holding a restriction, which is great. They can't do anything about it after that. It's very difficult to reverse a conservation restriction on a parcel of property. Is that correct, Ms. Merrill Lee?
Absolutely.
So, I mean, that's great. But are we losing revenue?
Well, the conservation restriction is going to happen anyway, whether we hold it or not. Like I said, if we don't hold it, then they'll go to somebody else to hold it. So I don't think that that's an issue. You know, I don't think we have any choice.
Yeah, okay. Well, if that's the case, and gentlemen, any questions, comments, concerns?
I just don't want to be on the hook for something that we really can't use, and if you can outsource that, then for that, but, you know.
Yeah, I'm kind of with Mr. Wonar on that one. We're
Well,
losing.
then I
3
guess
grand
we're all in
in
this,
tax-
I guess we're all in the same boat then, huh?
We're losing 3 grand in taxes, and somebody's got to hold it. I mean, that's how I'm interpreting this paper that I got that says there's a difference in taxes by $29.29 a year. And I'm still trying to find out what's the advantage of the town accepting it.
Well, it's open space for the town to use and enjoy. It protects the turtles and anybody else that happens to live there.
Yeah, but anybody's got to do that, you said, Merrilee, right? With that remaining 60-something acres, they can't touch it. It's got to go into conservation somewhere. So I just don't want to be on the hook for any future liability of the property. It doesn't make much sense, especially if it's swamp. You can't use it. It's protected species. I get it. I want to protect the environment as much as I can, what's going on with the environment anyway, and all the wildlife. I mean, the solar farms are really pushing a lot of the wildlife around right now. I know many people that are concerned about wildlife, coyotes, foxes, deers that are going through people's yards that they've never seen before. So there's a situation going on already, and we need to provide them this space out in our lands and everything else. But I don't know enough about it to say if somebody else holds the restriction, do we still lose the 29.29? Or if we hold the restriction, are we losing the 29.29?
I believe that no matter who holds it, you're going to lose that money because they're going to have the conservation restriction one way or the other.
Do we need to give you an answer tonight, Marilee?
No, sir.
So if we can, guys, you want to hold off on this and see if I can dig up and see dig into this a little bit further and see what's going on and how this works out?
And Marilee, I would ask in the meantime, if you could reach out to like the coalition and see if they wanted to, if they had an interest, but still give our residents the ability to utilize it with paths and, you know, trails and things of that nature, like they've done. Because I know the more stuff that they have, the more land they have in their portfolio helps them for other things. And maybe that's something they would have an interest in, and we still get the benefit of being able to use it like we have with some other properties.
Sure, I can do that. You should know that we hold a number of conservation restrictions already belonging to the coalition.
Yep, we do.
Okay.
We do.
And Marilee, is there still an issue on hunting on those lands, or has that been determined?
That's up in the air.
Okay.
The state says you can. So far, the town says no. The Conservation Commission is discussing it now. I think that they would like to request that it be allowed on conservation properties.
Well,
large enough.
I can say this as a hunter in my past. I can tell you this. That's what this land is really all about. The conservation land is to allow people to go out and hunt on. When they pay for, that's how they pay for conservation, game wardens and things of that nature, is through hunting licenses, fishing licenses, and all the things alike. So, and that's how we support that land. So in those game wardens and the conservation. So, you know, I'm definitely, as long as everybody's abiding by the law and are not within 300 feet or 500 feet of a household while they're shooting off a firearm, I say go for it. So see what Conservation Commission has. But, you know, I used to be an avid hunter when child growing up, spent a lot of time doing that. So I know there's a lot of people in the town that utilize our property as well to go out there and hunt. Matter of fact, Marilee, I think you have one of your members, when I was out at PJ Keating, referenced him being out back hunting there, right?
Yes, he's an avid hunter.
Right. So, you know, that's what conservation land's all about, in the right season. So, all right, let's explore this a little bit deeper, Marilee, and see what we can come up with and what the operating about this all is. And who owns it, what the responsibilities are and things of the like.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you, Marilee.
Thank you, Marilee.
Gentlemen, we have a Comcast permit approval. The Board of Selectmen will convene in its capacity as issuing authority for cable television licensing in the town to consider approval of the cable television renewal license between the town and Comcast and the issuance of a statement of reasons for renewal. Ms. Hebert, you want me just to, guys, you got any, before I go through all of this, because there's a few different motions that we need to do just as like protocol for the renewal, right, Ms. Hebert?
Yeah, I would at least start reading the first motion A so that we can be convened as the cable renewal committee before we talk.
All right, I move that the board convene as the issuing authority of the town of Acushnet for the purpose of approving cable television renewal license between the town and Comcast. Is there a motion? Roll call vote. Mr. Warner?
Yes.
Mr. DeRoche?
Yes, with discussion.
And I'm a yes. We'll discuss, Mr. DeRoche.
Okay, all right.
Julie said I had to do that so that we could convene and be in the discussion mode. So knock yourself out, Mr. DeRoche.
Well, it's very short. We're voting to approve this. We voted to approve a 4% charge or get back, and that amounts to about $190,000 a year from Comcast. Is that it in a nutshell, as far as the financial aspect of this goes?
Yep. So it's a 4%, which is level to what it currently is under the old contract, and 100,000 in capital costs received by the town in increments over 5 years. And the 100,000 is the same capital cost that we had in the last contract as well. So the last time the selectmen discussed this, they made no increases in the costs. Essentially, it's the cost for the residents, but it's the revenue that comes to the town. So we kept it level funded. And in addition, before the selectmen made that decision, we did have an ascertainment hearing with the Cable Advisory Committee as part of the regulations that we have to follow. There were a number of findings that the Cable Advisory Committee came up with, and there's a statement that you guys all should have kind of outlining everything. And the statement kind of says, you know, that these are all the steps that we've taken. These are the things that we've considered in giving the permit, and listing again those terms, the 4% and the 100,000 for capital funding. And that has to be included as part of the record. A lot of this is kind of technicality stuff. So we have to kind of follow the rules, but yeah, essentially that's what's happened to date. The Cable Advisory Committee had their hearing, and then the Board of Selectmen reviewed the permit, considered the revenue costs, and this is the final draft of that permit with your suggested amounts in there.
Very good.
And Ms. Hebert, for the record, we kind of held off on this because we reestablished the cable committee for the sole purpose of getting us through the agreement, right? So the board to take that bearing off, that load off the Board of Selectmen without dealing with all this stuff. And through you, we gave that authority. And we spoke last week, and you said that you met with individual members, and then you have to go through the meeting per se, but you met with every individual member of the committee, and they all okay with this agreement, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
Very good.
Ms. Hebert, we did a roll call vote. Do we have to do like a motion to approve these things as we go through all this?
So you have the motions B, C, and D to go through. And essentially you can just vote them. Again, the second one that you'll do, number C, part C, is relating to that statement that you all should have, that kind of, again, gives all of the background, and that's included as part of the record. So we can make that available. We have to send it to Comcast, but we can also make it available online as well, so people can see all of the steps that were taken.
Right, and we kept all the assessment fees, everything equal. So if Comcast bills go up, it's not our fault, right?
No.
I mean, not that my Comcast bill's freaking ridiculous already, but whatever.
Yes. And you did have the option to increase. You were able to go up to 5%.
That's correct.
And even I think for the capital up to 150,000. But again, the selectmen took that into consideration that it would impact the payments that people would have to make on their Comcast bills, and we kept it level funded. So it's enough to cover the costs that cable needs, but also isn't putting in an undue hardship on people.
Correct. So the next one I got to do is move that the board, as it is the issuing authority for the town of Acushnet, grants the renewal license to Comcast on the terms contained in the document presented to the board. Do we don't have to have any discussion? You want me to do roll call vote on that one too?
Yep.
Roll call vote, Mr. Wona,
Yes.
Mr. DeRoche,
Yes.
and I'm a yes. And then I move that the board, as it is the issuing authority for the town of Acushnet, issues the attached written statement of reasons for a decision to grant the renewal license to Comcast. Roll call vote, Mr. Wona,
Yes.
Mr. DeRoche,
Yes.
and I'm a yes. And then I move that the town administrator is authorized to take any further action required to finalize the renewal license and to execute documents relative thereto. Mr. Wona,
Yes.
Mr. DeRoche,
Yes.
and I'm a yes. Ms.
And then
Hebert?
I'll just need you all at some point to come in and sign the actual document. We have to provide it back to Comcast within 7 days. So thank you.
And if anything, I'll go on the record and say, if anything dramatic changes at the last minute, can you let the board members know that, hey, something crazy's going on? We authorized you to sign, but we didn't authorize you to sign the bank away, right?
Absolutely.
All right, thank you. The only other thing I got here is a letter of interest to be appointed to the Energy Committee, somewhere. That comes from Jerry Bergeron. I don't even need to look at that. It comes from Mr. Jerry Bergeron, a firefighter for over 30 years in the community of town of Acushnet, EMA director, volunteer over at the EMA for a number of years, a very instrumental individual in the town of Acushnet. Is there a motion to appoint Mr. Jerry Bergeron to the Energy Committee?
Yes.
So moved.
Roll call vote, Selectman Wona,
Yes.
Mr. DeRoche,
Yes.
and I'm a yes. All right, town administrators report.
We skipped over EMA also had a CARES request.
Oh, because I got too many agendas. You're right. I'm sorry. So EMA, gentlemen, has a CARES request, and it looks like it's in the amount of $4,235, and it's like, I can't even explain. Some of it's handheld V-touch controllers. It looks like it's upgrade kit solar. I think that's for the signage and things of that nature.
It was a sign. It's all
Yeah.
related to the sign.
It's some of those communication signs, like we have a DPW that we stick on the side of the road and things of that nature. They can put it in their trailer and all of that stuff. And it's good stuff to have. So it's in the amount of $4,235. Again, it's not taxation. It's from the CARES Act money. Is there a motion to approve? Roll call vote. Mr. DeRoche,
Yes.
Yes.
Selectman Wona, and I am a yes. All set with that, Ms. Hebert?
What's that?
I got 3 agendas. I apologize because I made notes on some, and I'll go back to the.
No worries. It's town
Yeah.
administrator's report.
Yeah, town administrators report. What you got?
So I just have 3 quick things. The first one, and I should have thought of it when we had Heather here earlier, just to congratulate Heather. She was recently, she passed her certification, and this is the first year that they've done the certification. The Massachusetts Association of Council on Aging, they informed us that Heather Sylvia successfully completed certification as COA director. So just congrats to her. I mean, obviously Heather has done so much during this past year, and the fact that on top of it, she trained and went through all the certification process to be an official, Council on Aging certified member is just fantastic, and we're so grateful to have her. So I just wanted to congratulate her for becoming one of the first people to be certified through this process.
Yeah, she's,
Yes.
I mean, it says a letter from the Massachusetts Council on Aging. This rigorous year-long process has given her the opportunity to comprehensively document her accomplishments as a Council on Aging Director. 5 people have successfully completed the certification process statewide, so pretty commendable on Miss Heather Sylvia's part. She's an outstanding employee. I was happy to bring her back several years back. Everybody knows she left for a little bit. We brought somebody else in, and then we were kind of on the hook. I made a phone call to Miss Heather Sylvia, and I asked if she would come back to the town of Acushnet, and I'm delighted, and I couldn't be happier than having somebody like her representing us at the Council on Aging. So just goes to show you how dedicated she really is to the town and the seniors over there. Congratulations, Heather. We appreciate your commitment. Next.
Great.
Yes.
So the next is just to let you know that, Chris Oliver, our Director of IT, got a cybersecurity grant through the Executive Office of Technology Services and Security. It's not for a set amount, but essentially it provides as much training as we need for end user cybersecurity training, assessment, and simulation tools administered by the state and available to employees. And this is for the town and the school. And again, we can never get too many grants, especially for something as important as cybersecurity right now. And the last thing I wanted to mention is the MVP grant. We've talked about this a lot in the past. It's the Municipal Vulnerability Preparedness Grant. And we're finally in the process of having hearings, public hearings in the process of getting the final plan together. And so there are hearings scheduled for this Friday, which is March 12th, and the Friday after, March 19th. We'll have all that information on the website if anyone's interested in joining. It's essentially looking at any kind of vulnerability that the town might be experiencing currently or experiencing in the future, and looking to set in line a plan for how we can prevent that in the future. So anyone who's interested, please feel free to join in March 12th and March 19th, and I'll make sure that that information is front and center on the website.
Yeah, I had a conversation with Miss He, but I was a little bit disappointed we didn't get this. It requires, a lot of this MVP grant stuff requires like public outreach, communications, and things of that nature. That's why I asked her to quickly speak on this, gentleman. And I think you both remember there was on the town meeting, we unfortunately had to spend $75,000 out of our water surplus for a water resilience program that we were scheduled to do by the end of June of this year. We were actually forced to do by the end of this year as part of the requirement. And if we would have been a little more proactive in the past with this MVP stuff and would have had our act together a little bit better, we probably could have got some grant money to cover the cost of that resilience. Instead, we had to spend $75,000 from water surplus. So this MVP grant stuff is really throttled around the climate change kind of things, flood zones, which we have a little bit over here by the Acushnet River, anything really to do with droughts. If you read up on it a little bit, it's a lot to do with droughts. And then kind of on the other hand, you would have put drought and floods in the same conversation, but that's really what it's all about, to see where you're at and your infrastructure. So from the town's perspective, I think the town's water infrastructure, sewer infrastructure, and things of the like are the most important criteria for MVP grant money. So that's really the only places I can see it, and that's really the emphasis around it. There's some other things that you can do with it, mosquito control and things of that nature. Perhaps Selectmen there might be a little interest in your Lake Street committee members to look at this for MVP because it does have a lot to do with climate, water, flood zones, mosquitoes, and things of the like. So maybe I know the state's got I just looked at a website on the state. I think it was on the mass.gov website. And I know that this thing's like four hours long, which is kind of like, who wants to sit in front of a Zoom meeting for 4 hours long? I know we're doing a long meeting tonight. We got executive session, but this MVP stuff, the mass.gov website, they had something on there. It was like an hour-long session. So if you guys go on mass.gov for the MVP, look up MVP, you might get quite a bit out of that 1 hour seminar that they're doing on theirs and get some interest in things and maybe some information that could help us out in the town. But I know Miss Kathy Silva from our water department's really looking at this pretty hard for the future, because I'm sure it's not the end of that expenditure of funds. And the last thing we want to be doing is depleting our water surplus, just doing these kind of things, especially if there's a lot of money out there in grants. I've seen some other communities get in excess of $300,000 plus in grants, and there's a match, yes, but they're not equal. It's, I mean, I think I've seen a community out there with 300 and change in grants, and they only put up like 70-something thousand bucks. So, you know, probably a pretty good offset of funds on that topic. So,
and so if I can, the part that we're going through right now is the plan. And essentially, we can't apply for any action grants afterward that don't directly correlate to an item that's in our plan. So it's important that you know, people join and participate, because if something is overlooked and not included in our plan, then we can't file for an action grant. And as you said, Mr. Gasper, the action grants can run up to, I believe it's $2 million. Obviously, that would be for a bigger project, but there's a lot of money at stake, and there's a lot that, you know, could help the community in the future. So,
yep. All right, gentlemen, any questions, comments, concerns?
Nope.
Moving on, gentlemen, future business for the next selectmen's meeting. I know Ms. Hebert put 4 p.m., but if we're doing a budget powwow for next week, we got it on for Tuesday at 4. If you guys want to hold that time frame, Tuesday night at 4, like a regular selectmen's meeting, that's fine. But if it's a budget powwow where we're going to try to bang off pretty much everything except for police, fire, and DPW, if we can maybe even throw one of them in there into the mix, if we want to do something and not take up the whole day, we can, Julie and I, try to look at the remaining budgets that we have and try to figure out a good way to pass along a lot of these budgets and get through it and send an agenda out to you folks. Perhaps some other conversations, if they're light conversation, we could take that up as other business as well. But I like to try to do the budget more so when during the daytime when our department heads are here, and not making them come on to a Zoom meeting at 5 o'clock at night at supper time if all we're doing is discussing budgets. So what say you, gentlemen?
Yeah,
Gentlemen?
I think I can do that.
Monday, whatever you want to do. I mean, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, if you know, you want to do something during the day, 10 to 12, 12 to 2, whatever. That's really
Well, Tuesday, I'm open. I'm open Tuesday in the afternoon.
Selectman DeRoche.
Man.
No,
What days are you asking for? Let me just ask. You know, what days are you gentlemen asking for?
Dave Warner said he's good on Tuesday afternoon. If we can do something 12 to 2, 2 to 4, maybe not even that long. I don't know what we're doing yet, but I'm just asking if there's something that you guys want to entertain instead of a 4 o'clock. If you want to do 4 o'clock, I'm fine with that.
No, I was where you were bouncing between Wednesday and Monday.
I said Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday to leave my schedule wide open to try to accommodate you two gentlemen if there was anything in those days. That's all I did.
Tuesday. So instead of Tuesday at 4 o'clock, have it Tuesday at noon. Is that what you're saying? Or Tuesday at 2?
Can you do Tuesday at 12, Dave Warner?
Yeah, but that's just for the budget, right? And then the regular selectmen's meeting would be back at 4, correct?
No, we were kind of just trying to bang that out. But so you want to just do a 4 o'clock?
Oh, no. I'll do whatever you guys want to do. That's fine.
Tuesday at noon works for me.
Yeah. Is that all right, Selectman Warner?
Sure.
Yeah.
Good. All right.
And we'll figure some things out around then. And if not, if things change, we'll go back to the 4 o'clock. How's that sound, gentlemen?
Very good. Thank you.
Well, Julie and I will have some conversations. If you guys have anything else that you want to discuss about the agenda, and if we want to change it back, just go back to the regular next Tuesday at 4 o'clock because of some other discussions, that's fine. I don't have a problem. We'll go back. I was just trying to accommodate department heads if we're going to talk budget.
I mean, we all have our budget, right? We've got all of our stuff. I would just ask that we look at the budget independently, mark up the questions that we have, you know, and be prepared to hammer the stuff out.
Yeah, I'm ready to go. We all got our budget books. Although, gentlemen, I did notice on the desk, I think it was late last week, and I think Melissa gave it to me in a meeting maybe 2 weeks ago. She had a little stack of some updates, right, Ms. Hebert? And I think they may still be up here.
yeah, and there are more too. There are a few others that have come in since. So we'll just make sure to stop by at some point and I can get you all the changes with the cover sheet so you can see what changed.
Okay.
Yeah, there's a few budgets upstairs, gentlemen, for you guys. And Julie, I'm gonna need whatever ones that I didn't get as far as updates go.
Mhm.
All right, and then we can take a look at that. And as Mr. Wona said, let's get like we did tonight, we addressed 3 budgets relatively quickly tonight. Just identifying, any big increases, and outside of that, I don't think there's much more to do. Get FinCom on the roll. I know it's been difficult for FinCom in remote meetings, and certain people are going to be on phones, and hopefully we'll be out of this pandemic mess. So, gentlemen, we have a multitude of things, and if we don't get to them all, we don't get to them all, but we definitely got to speak on PJ Keating. So is there a motion to go into executive session under General Law 30A subsection 21A3 to discuss strategy with respect to litigation? PJ Keating, if an open meeting may have a detrimental effect on the litigating position of the public body and the chair so declares, and the board will not return to public sessions. Is there a motion? Roll call vote. Mr. Wona?
Yes.
Mrs. DeRoche?
Yes.
And I'm a yes. And is there a motion to go into executive session on the General Law 30A subsection 21A3 to conduct strategy in preparation for negotiations with union personnel, or to conduct contract negotiations with union personnel, police, fire, town hall, clerical, DPW, library, if an open meeting will have a detrimental effect on the bargaining positions and the chair so declares? Mr. Wona?
Yes.
Mr. DeRoche?
Yes.
And I'm a yes. And is there a motion to go into executive session on the General Law 30A subsection 21A3 to conduct strategy in preparation for negotiations with non-union personnel, or to conduct contract negotiations with non-union personnel, fire chief, if an open meeting will have a detrimental effect on the bargaining position and the chair so declares? Selectman Wona?
Yes.
Mr. DeRoche?
Yes.
And I am a yes. We will not return under any of the executive sessions to public session. We are now in executive session.